Mega Man X Dive has over 100 characters, which is a lot, yet it still feels like plenty are missing. And no, I don't just mean in general. There's been so many games over the years that it'd be unreasonable to expect every Robot Master, Reploid, NetNavi, and Human to be put into the game. I mean, there's some major characters that just aren't there. Some honestly surprise me. For fun, let's go over some of the most egregious omissions, series by series. We'll do 2 for each, and I'll try to avoid letting my personal biases influence my picks, instead going by importance to series. Sorry, Sunflower. I'm West, the Explosion, and here are 14 helpful suggestions if Capcom ever updates X Dive again sometime down the line. Slight spoilers for each series mentioned if you're really behind. Man, it'll be really embarrassing if I list someone who actually made it in. I feel like Dr. Wily's the most obvious when it comes to the classic series, him being the main villain and all. Yet, he always fights from the relative safety of a cockpit, so I really have no idea how they'd make him work. Unlike Light, who gets some Street Fighter duds, Albert really is just a guy. So let's pass over him for the second most obvious, Gutsman. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll say it a million times, but Gutsman is the most iconic out of the standard Robot Masters. He appears in so many of the titles, has so many different iterations, that it's honestly kinda surprising that he never got his own spin-off game. So far. As if that wasn't enough, he's one of only about a half dozen characters that appear in every single episode of the Ruby Spears cartoon, and as silly as that show was, you really can't underestimate what a big deal it was back in the day. I honestly can't remember what came first for me, the original X game, one of the NES titles, or this dumb little cartoon. What I'm saying is, Gutsman's a big deal, and I'm not just talking about his stature. I don't think any of the Robot Masters, other than the main characters, are in X Dive, and it feels like a bit of a waste that they didn't make an exception for Gutsman. Though there is that Drill Man card in the shop for some reason. And second, I'd say Duo. He's important enough to have a musically inspired name, kind of. You can be a duo in most things, and that includes singing together. He's one of the primary characters in Mega Man 8, and had there not been such a big space between that and 9, I would have expected him to show up in the subsequent games, though Inti Creates went back to basics, so he never did. He shows up with the evil energy, which, while never confirmed, I can't help but wonder if there's some connection between that and Robo-Enza and the Maverick virus, both pretty big plot points in later games. He's got quite the striking design, that spiky shoulder and just being very asymmetrical in general, which is pretty unique. And he's been playable before, both in the Power Battle and, if it had gotten released, the Rockman X Online MMO, where a whole class was supposed to be based off him. There's not only precedence, but that also gives him a connection to the X series, even if all we ever got from that game were trailers. Given that the game is called X Dive, the X series has the most representation, so much so that you might think that they'd have everybody and I'd be grasping at straws for their section, but nope, I had more than 2 for this one. Bound by my own rules though, I'll stick with the ones that honestly upset me. How the heck is Lumine not in this one? He replaces Sigma as the final boss for X8, and with some of the implications from that, might have even gone to usurp his position in the whole series, if it was allowed to continue. Given that Sigma gets several versions in X Dive, I feel like Lumine's owed at least one. He's got a cool design, one of the best tracks in the series, and was all set up to upend the entire story. He's constantly on my mind, as I ponder what could have been, and I know I'm not the only one. I'm constantly on the lookout for more Lumine, and was previously upset with Smash Bros. For not even making him a spirit. This is even worse though. Capcom, you should know better. The next one's a bit harder to choose. Do I go with the version exclusive, whose equivalent got in several times, or do I start ranting about my own personal conspiracy theory and have to maybe pause the video to give out vague spoiler warnings, even more so than the ones I already did? You know what, for simplicity's sake, we'll go with the former and nominate Double, aka Jello Man. X Dive loves X4, with it having some of the most characters, stages, tracks, heck, it might even have more representation than the original X title, and I get it, it's really good. But with as many alts as Iris gets, it's kinda weird that Double doesn't get anything. I mean, there was more than just the Zero campaign in the game. Double actually wasn't on my radar until someone in chat mentioned him, but when they did, I had to admit that it made a lot of sense. While Iris's fight is the most memorable in the game, facing double was probably the most impactful for X. See? Look at it haunting him in this final scene. It would really balance the X4 roster. Not only that, but he has a cool design and fits the same villain mold as Vile and Dynamo's inclusions do, so he'd fit right in. So yeah, throw double in there and maybe give him a swimsuit alt too, preferably a Speedo. I almost don't want to go over the Zero series, given how apparent the absences are here. Okay, for those not in the know, some of the most notable characters from the games are a part of a group called the Four Guardians. Harpuya is probably the most popular and well-known, and important too, so of course he gets an X Dive. Leviathan is the only female member, so in addition to being included, she also gets a few seasonal outfits. And that's it. Do you see the problem here? Do you understand very basic math? Yeah, they only included half of the very cool and central to the plot Four Guardians. I have to leave out 2 final bosses just to put them here, that's how bad it is. Fafnir punches, he shoots, he grabs, he lights things on fire, really, he just tries to beat the crap out of people however he can. He's in 3/4 of the games. While he might not be the most complex character, him being mostly just a battle maniac, he's still probably my favorite. Then there's Phantom. Poor sweet Phantom, probably the most loyal out of all of them, which is saying something. While he meets his end very early, you really feel his absence in 0-2, and if you happen to stumble upon the special rematch against him in 3, well, that's one of the most exciting discoveries you can make, in a series that is pretty high octane. Oh, and he's a cool ninja, with spammy shuriken and kunai, if you need me to sell you on him on what he brings to the table. The Four Guardians work great as a group, and it's a crime to separate them, especially with their master Copy X in the game. They're supposed to stick close to him. I don't know how they justified not putting them in, heck, even Harpuya feels almost like an afterthought. ZX manages to be even more obvious than Zero, yet here, I actually understand the logic, which really bugs me. The first game does the Pokemon thing, asking you whether you're a boy or a girl. Man, they really hit you with the hard one, right up front. Choose boy and you'll play as Vent, girl and you'll be Ale. Each are great characters and have small little tweaks to their stories, so it's worthwhile to play through as both. There's also a set of sibling bosses, Pandora and Prometheus, which are some of my favorite characters in ZX. Not only do they have a pretty unique set of boss fights, going up against each one individually before eventually facing both at once, but they also have cool designs and an almost RPG-like party dynamic. Prometheus physically assaulting you while Pandora uses spells. And since the idea with ZX seems to be to have the big bad keep rotating out, while not the main antagonist in either game, they feel like the primary villains. So which of these are included with X Dive? That's right, Ale and Pandora, the girls, and each has at least one alt as well. It feels really weird for me to complain about this, since I normally like female representation, and am glad that we're long past the days when playing as Princess Peach and Mario would get you made fun of, but here, it just feels a little gross. When it comes to gacha games, the general rule seems to be, throw in a lot of waifus, just to trick suckers into spending money on more roles for their most desired PNGs. Sure, we get a little more than that here, with full character models, but the logic still holds. Turning Mega Man, the series that has been primarily boys, and pretty much dividing the roster between main characters and cherry-picked girls that they can also put in swimsuits, feels a little inappropriate and really transparent. And nowhere is it more obvious than with their ZX picks. I'm surprised they didn't go for a triple and put Ash in as well. Nothing against her, I just see the pattern. So put in Vent, at least one, and put in frickin' Prometheus. Him and Pandora are siblings and function as a pair, so only having one feels about as wrong as only including 2 out of the 4 Guardians. I've seen rumors that they were planning on putting him in and then just didn't, so please, give me the Scythe Boy. And if you want more girls for your gacha game, maybe try including more in the mainline stuff, so you don't have to grope around quite so much. Yes, I know exactly what I did there, you perverts. Someone should be ashamed. For Legends, give us Teasel and Bonbon. While Tron Bon is definitely the most popular and the Surbot's the most famous, them probably being the face of the series, the Bon siblings are very well liked. They're doing the time Boken trope of 3 likable villains, 2 guys, 1 girl who's normally the main driving force, that's been further popularized by trios like Team Rocket. I do hate Team Rocket though and hope they die. That's neither here nor there though, and the family serves as almost secondary protagonists in Legends, getting a lot of screen time and character development, to the point where they even get their own spin-off game, The Misadventures of Tron Bonne. Plus, I don't know if you know this, but Legends fans are crazy. Admirably crazy, but crazy. I like Mega Man, and while I have my favorite games and series, I play it all. A lot of them, though, are into Legends and not much else. And they tend to be really into them, which is only exacerbated by how long it's been since their last game, which is further exacerbated by how they were promised Legends 3, then denied. While they got the heavy hitters, Mega Man Volnut, Roll Casket, Tron Bonne, and Serbots in X Dive, that they stopped there feels like a huge missed opportunity to get more of this niche community into the game. Plus, like we've just gone over, they've been done dirty and could really use some nice things coming their way. So Patch and Teasel. He's a fun character, well written, and a good older brother. And Bon Bon. Sure, he's just kind of a baby, but the mystery and intrigue surrounding just what sort of being he is interesting, and he rounds out the group well. And you know what? Just for you Legends fans out there, hashtag get me off the moon. Shadowman.exe once killed a whole country, except for one guy who was in the bathroom at one time. He then broke into a hyper-secure computer with a ton of complex codes needed to advance that he just managed to bypass, and when the Navis assigned to guard the network tried to stop him, they needed to self-destruct just to take out one of his henchmen. When Proto Man, one of the toughest Navis out there and your main rival, managed to catch up to him, it took all he had to defeat Shadow Man, which was revealed to just be a doppelganger with a mere fraction of his power. When Mega Man himself caught up, he needed Proto Man to pull a Raditz on him just so he could hit him with a Deus Ex Machina that sounded very made up and implausible, just to put the two of you on even footing. Part of the reason why he was never officially a part of Gospel and was just a mercenary that they paid off was likely because they would have been too powerful if he were a full member. To my knowledge, he's also the only enemy in the series with an insta-kill. The developers made the guy too cool and too powerful, almost to the point of parody. Though he doesn't seem quite as strong in Battle Network 5. You know, when he's on your side. With as much love as they seem to have for the guy, I'm surprised he's not a full character in X Dive, though I suppose the people working on each were different. Still, he seems like the type that you could tempt people into gacha for, whether I approve or not. And second, we have Colonel.exe. He's one of, I believe, only 4 X characters to get a Battle Network version, so he's already a significant exception. Plus, this continues the X4 love, him being one of the central characters, yet only receiving one version in X Dive. Giving us his net nappy form, which looks pretty keen, would be a good way to give us more of him without needing to come up with some weird new seasonal costume. And he's not just significant for the X series, he's also one of only 3 characters in the Battle Network series to get his name on a game box. Mega Man and Proto Man EXE already showing up in the crossover. Also, he has a bulletproof cape. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. It has been far too long since I've played Star Force. It's not my least played, but it is the one I'm the foggiest on, and that seems reflected in the X Dive roster, so I'm probably not the only one. You get this series Mega Man, of course, along with Harp, Note, and Rogue. Just 3. If you don't count alts, it has more than ZX, but if you do, this is the least represented here, despite not having the least amount of games. I'm half tempted to just say, toss in a bunch of Geo's different forms, after all, every other Mega Man has gotten alts, but no, we can do better than that. I can do better than that. I'm taking out the official works, refreshing my memory, and picking out some good ones. Yeah, I was thinking about him. Where's the other guy I was considering? You know what? He does have the proportions we're looking for, he could work. Oh geez, 3 has a lot of really cool bosses. Seriously, where is that guy? Did I imagine a whole story sequence and boss or something? Okay, there he is. Finally. Okay, so it turns out there are a lot of good choices from Star Force. I'm gonna go with the 2 that I remember the most, outside of the Snake Lady, since that means that they were important enough to leave an impression. And yeah, I'm gonna discriminate based off of a lack of legs. Taurus Fire is an early series boss, almost filling the same role as Gutsman. Big guy, attached to the big kid that looks like he should be a bully, yet is somehow one of the main character's closest friends. Sometime after the first game, I remember him becoming an ally without a lot of reason given, so he had staying power. More important than that though, I remember him showing up in early previews of the series, being one of the first characters we saw and leading to wild speculation that, with his more animalistic design, Star Force might possibly be to X what Battle Network was to Classic. While that turned out to not be the case, He was such a topic of hot debate that he's one of the few characters that someone with just a passing knowledge of the series might actually recognize. Really wish it had become more popular. Next, there's Acid Ace. Was gonna go with Gemini Spark, but the whole twin mechanic might be a little weird. Anyway, the human component of this form is one of the main characters in Star Force 3. I recall him being a hero with a checkered past and a sort of mentor to Geo, and looking over the wiki seems to confirm this. I really need to replay these on my own and not just wait for Capcom to release a collection. Anyway, one of the versions of Star Force 3 is named after the character, Black Ace, and Geo even gets a special form based off of Acid Ace, so he's pretty important, and his appearance is different enough from the other reps that there's not really a whole lot of overlap. His color scheme even brings to mind Tekka Man, calling back to the Tatsunoko influence that a lot of the games seem to have. Bringing him up also recalls the third game to mind and reminds us that the series never really ended, just kinda faded away. I'm part of the problem though. Original characters: Circle Man, Shiny Gardevoir cosplaying Zero. I kept going back and forth on capping this video at 2 or just throwing out as many reps as made sense, but when I was thinking on that second option, I would come up with 2, then 3, then 4, and it just kept going on, so I decided to stick with my original idea to keep the video from getting ridiculously long. Still, I would like to apologize to Cutman, Spider, El Pizo, Gemini Spark, and the other Legends pirates, which were the hardest characters to leave out. And while I'd never say anything as kind as sorry to Dr. Vile, he probably belongs here too. That's on top of the other dozen or so I was thinking of including. Really, as big as the Mega Man franchise is, they could have kept this going until the end of time, but hey, you have to stop somewhere. Probably could have put some of the folks on this list in before some of those swimsuits. While I think my list is pretty solid, I'd love to hear who other people think are the obvious omissions. As always, thanks for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you're into Mega Man. For everlasting peace.